Evan never planned for a night like this. He had spent the whole day trying to distract himself from the thoughts that kept returning no matter how hard he pushed them away. His Seattle apartment felt too quiet to still, as if the walls themselves were reminding him of the life he once had and the one he had slowly learned to live without. He stood in the center of his living room, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady, trying to find some sense of calm. But calm was a stranger these days. His chest felt tight, his thoughts pulled in too many directions. And every time he tried to silence them, they only grew louder. He told himself he was preparing to move forward, preparing to let go, preparing to start fresh. But even he knew the truth. He wasn't getting ready for a new beginning. He was trying to hold himself together long enough to survive the night. There were memories he had avoided for years. Memories of a voice, a smile, a person who once mattered more than anything. He thought time would erase them, but time only softened the edges. The memories were still there. Waiting for a moment like this to rise again, he opened his eyes and let out a shaky breath, hoping the tension in his body would ease. It didn't. The apartment around him felt small, like it was shrinking inch by inch. His framed photos, the small bookshelf, the half-finished cup of coffee on the counter, they all seemed to watch him, waiting for him to take a step he had avoided for too long. He ran a hand through his hair and paced toward the window. The rain outside made the city glow in scattered reflections. Car lights moved like streaks, the sound of tires on wet pavement creating a soft hum. Normally, that sound calmed him. But tonight, it only made him feel more aware of everything he had lost. Then came the knock. A single, quiet knock at first. He froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. No friends dropping by. No packages. No neighbors. He waited for a second knock, thinking maybe he imagined it. Then came another firm, this time clear, unmistakable. His pulse jumped. He glanced toward the door as if afraid it might swing open on its own. For a brief moment he wondered if he should ignore it. But curiosity pulled him forward. His footsteps felt heavy as he crossed the room, each step echoing louder than it should have. He reached the door, hesitated, steadied his breath, and opened it. And time stopped, standing in the hallway, soaked lightly from the rain, but looking exactly the same as the last day Evan saw him. Was Caleb the person he thought he would spend the rest of his life with? The person who had walked away without looking back? The person whose absence had rewritten everything Evan believed about love? For a full 2 seconds, Evan couldn't breathe. His throat tightened, his heart raced, and every memory he had tried to bury came rushing forward at once. Caleb didn't look surprised to see him. Instead, his eyes softened as if he'd been preparing for this moment too. "Hey," Caleb said quietly. The sound of his voice hit Evan harder than he expected. It wasn't loud, just soft and steady, but it carried warmth he hadn't heard in years. Evan didn't speak. He couldn't. His thoughts spun too fast. How long had it been? 3 years? 4? And yet Caleb looked exactly as he remembered, the same gentle expression, the same calm presence, the same slight tilt of his head when he wasn't sure what to say next. "I know I should have called," Caleb added, "but I didn't trust myself to wait for an answer." Evan swallowed hard, still unable to form words. He gripped the door, steadying himself. "What are you doing here?" he finally managed. Caleb let out a slow breath, the kind someone releases when they've been carrying something heavy for too long. "I needed to see you," he said. "I've been meaning to for months, but I kept telling myself it wasn't the right time. Tonight, I couldn't hold it off anymore." Evan looked away for a moment, trying to calm the storm building inside him. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Caleb was supposed to be living his own life far away from here. Their story had ended. The door between them had closed. But here he was close enough to touch, close enough to break him all over again. "You should come inside," Evan heard himself say. Even though a part of him wanted to close the door and pretend none of this was happening, Caleb stepped past him. Careful, almost hesitant, as though he didn't want to disturb the space. The familiar scent of rain mixed with Caleb's cologne followed him in, stirring memories Evan wasn't prepared for. When Evan shut the door, the sound echoed through the apartment like a final decision. Caleb looked around the room, taking in the small changes and the things that had stayed the same. "You kept the artwork," he said softly, noticing a framed painting they once bought together. "I thought you might have taken it down." "I tried," Evan admitted, his voice low, "but it never felt right." Caleb nodded once, his expression unreadable. "I didn't come here to make things hard for you. You already did," Evan said before he could stop himself. Caleb's eyes shifted, a trace of regret crossing them. "I know." Evan walked away, needing space, needing air. He stood near the kitchen counter, fingers gripping its edge. Caleb followed at a slow pace, leaving a respectful distance between them. The tension wasn't angry, it was heavy, emotional, unfinished. "I don't want to waste your time," Caleb said. "I just needed to see you face to face. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry." Evan blinked, confused. "Sorry for what?" "For leaving the way I did," Caleb answered. "For thinking distance would fix things. For thinking walking away was better for both of us. It wasn't. I see that now." The apology cut deeper than Evan expected. He had spent years creating his own versions of why things ended. Hearing Caleb admit fault felt like ripping open an old wound. "You can't just show up after years and say that," Evan said. His voice didn't rise, but it trembled. "I'm not trying to undo the past," Caleb replied. "I just don't want silence to be the last thing between us." Evan stared at him, his emotions twisted so tightly he wasn't sure which feeling was strongest relief. Anger, longing, or fear. Caleb looked different, somehow not physically, but emotionally. Softer, more honest. Or maybe Evan had never truly seen this version of him before? "Why now?" Evan asked, his voice quieter. "All this time, why come tonight?" "Because tonight I realized that if I didn't come, I might never have the courage again," Caleb said. "And I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything we shared." The sincerity in his voice felt real. Too real. Evan turned away again, unsure what to do. His body felt tense, his thoughts tangled. He had spent so long building walls. And Caleb's presence felt like a hand pressing against each one, testing their strength. "I'm not asking for anything," Caleb continued. "Not forgiveness. Not a second chance. I just wanted you to know the truth." Evan closed his eyes, taking a long breath, steadying the rush of emotions inside him. His heart wanted things his mind wasn't ready for. His mind remembered the hurt his heart wanted to forget. He stood silently, thoughts swirling, rain tapping softly against the windows. When he finally turned around, Caleb was already watching him with quiet patience. "Can we talk?" Caleb asked. "Just talk. Nothing else." Evan hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to feel this way again, to feel hope. But something in Caleb's expression, something honest and vulnerable, made him nod. "Yeah," Evan said softly. "We can talk." Caleb smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't for show but came from relief. They both sat down, not too close, but not as far apart as Evan expected. The tension shifted, becoming gentler, warmer. Like the room itself understood they were stepping into something fragile. Caleb took a breath, as if preparing to open a door he had locked inside himself. "Evan, there's more I need to tell you." Evan felt his heart tighten again. Whatever was coming next, he could feel it changing everything. The door clicked shut, and for a moment, the apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the rain outside. Caleb looked around the room carefully, his eyes tracing the lines of the furniture. The small details of Evan's life that hadn't changed. Evan felt exposed, like the walls themselves were judging him, reminding him that this was a home he'd built without the person he thought would be in it forever. Caleb's gaze lingered on the familiar things, the painting on the wall, the little stack of books on the shelf, the coffee mug still half full on the counter. It all felt ordinary, and yet, under Caleb's presence, it carried a weight Evan hadn't anticipated. "You look different," Caleb said softly, breaking the quiet. Evan looked away, unsure how to respond. "Older," he added, with a light chuckle that didn't quite reach his eyes. Evan's heart tightened, the sound echoing like a memory he'd tried to lock away. "No, Caleb corrected himself, his voice sincere. Lonelier. Those words hit harder than Evan expected. He swallowed, his throat tight. Lonelier. That was exactly what he had been feeling. The emptiness he had tried to hide behind work, friends, and a routine that kept him busy. Caleb's eyes, gentle and patient, saw through all of it. He saw what Evan had been pretending wasn't there. Evan moved toward the couch, keeping a small distance. He needed space, even though every fiber of his being wanted to be closer. Caleb followed slowly, respectful of the distance Evan kept. The tension between them wasn't sharp or angry, was heavy with unsaid words. With longing and the weight of years that had passed. "Why are you here?" Evan asked, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't want to hear the answer, and yet he needed it. Caleb's presence forced emotions that Evan had buried to the surface. Caleb's gaze never wavered. "Because leaving you was the biggest mistake I ever made," Caleb said. His voice was steady, but there was a rawness in it that made Evan flinch. The words carried a weight he hadn't expected, one that made his heart both ache and race. Evan felt his stomach tighten. His mind was flooded with memories, evenings spent laughing. Walks in the park, long conversations that stretched into the night. The small moments that built a life together now reduced to snapshots in his mind. Caleb's words brought all of it back, sharper and more vivid than he had allowed himself to remember. "I thought I'd moved on," Caleb continued, his voice calm, measured, but soft. "New city, new people, new routines. But nothing felt real without you." His eyes searched Evan's face, looking for a reaction, a sign that he was heard, that he mattered. Evan's chest ached, a mix of frustration and longing twisting inside him. How could someone walk back into his life and make him feel this way after all these years? Evan wanted to look away, to shield himself from the emotions rising too quickly. "You can't just come back and say things like that," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but it trembled slightly. He wanted to be angry, wanted to push Caleb away, but the truth was stronger than his fear. He had never stopped caring. "Not fully. Not really. I don't deserve another chance," Caleb admitted, his words carrying honesty that cut through the tension. "I'm not asking for one. I just needed you to know the truth. That I never forgot you. That leaving was wrong. That I've been trying to fix what I broke, even if it was just in myself." There was a pause, a moment heavy with meaning. "And now, I'm here." Evan sat back, unsure where to place his hands. He wanted to reach out to pull Caleb closer, to close the distance that had grown over the years. But he couldn't. Not yet. His pride, his fear, and his heart all warred inside him. He had spent so long convincing himself he could live without Caleb, and yet, now, faced with the man who had once been everything, that belief seemed fragile, almost laughable. Caleb's gaze softened. "I know this isn't easy. I know I've hurt you. But I couldn't stay away any longer. I had to try, even if it's just to speak to you, even if it's just to see you." His voice was steady, gentle, sincere. There was no pressure, no demand, just a truth that was hard to ignore. Evan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside him. His mind raced. Could he trust Caleb? Could he let himself feel again after all the years of distance and disappointment? He opened his eyes slowly and met Caleb's gaze. There was something in those eyes, something familiar, something that felt like home. His chest tightened, his heart beating faster. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the possibility of hope. Before Evan could respond, another sound broke the fragile moment. A knock, quick, insistent, unfamiliar. Evan froze. Caleb's brow furrowed in confusion. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked. Evan shook his head slowly. The knocking grew louder, urgent, and Evan felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. He wasn't expecting anyone. He wasn't prepared for interruptions. He wasn't prepared for anything outside this fragile bubble he and Caleb had created in the room. Evan's hands shook slightly as he walked toward the door. Caleb watched him, concern flickering in his eyes. "Who is it?" Caleb asked, his voice calm but curious. Evan swallowed hard. He didn't recognize the person knocking, but something told him that whoever it was would change the night completely. The thought of opening the door filled him with both dread and anticipation. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, trying to steady his racing heart. He turned the handle, feeling the cool metal under his fingertips, and took a deep breath. When he opened the door, he was met with a familiar face from the past, a person he hadn't expected. Someone who would complicate the night, someone whose presence could shift everything. Caleb stepped closer, his posture protective but open, waiting silently to see how Evan would react. Evan's chest tightened as he realized that the night, which had begun with quiet, tentative emotions, was now about to confront him with choices he hadn't planned for. Decisions he had avoided for years. The air between them felt electric. Caleb remained calm, understanding the unspoken tension, giving Evan the space to decide how to navigate this new twist. Evan's mind raced. What would this person want? How would it affect the fragile moment he had just begun to share with Caleb? Every scenario played out in his head, each one more complicated than the last. And yet, there was a part of him that wanted to face it, that wanted to confront the past fully before moving forward. He stepped aside, letting the person in, and the room's energy shifted instantly. The rain outside continued to patter against the windows, adding a rhythmic tension to the scene. Caleb's eyes met Evan's briefly, silently asking if he was okay, if he was ready. Evan nodded slightly, trying to reassure him, though his own heart was racing with uncertainty. The room, small and familiar, felt like the stage for a story that had been waiting to unfold for years. Evan and Caleb sat back down, but the distance between them had grown slightly, as if acknowledging the intrusion. The stranger, standing now in the room, added a layer of complexity to a night that had started simply with longing and reconciliation. Evan's emotions were in turmoil, fear, hope, curiosity. Love all intertwined in a way that made him both anxious and exhilarated. Caleb remained steady, a calm presence in the storm, his eyes never leaving Evan's, silently offering support without words. The conversation shifted naturally, carefully navigating around the new arrival. Caleb spoke softly, recounting moments from the past, expressing regret and honesty in ways that were hard for Evan to dismiss. Each word struck a chord, reminding Evan of the depth of their shared history. The connection that had never truly faded, even across years and distance. Evan listened, heart aching, mind racing, as he realized that the past and present were colliding in ways he had never expected. Despite the tension, there was a strange comfort in the moment. The familiarity of Caleb's presence, the honesty in his voice, and the shared history between them created a fragile intimacy. Evan felt a mix of vulnerability and courage, realizing that he had allowed himself to feel deeply again, even in the face of uncertainty. The rain continued outside, a quiet reminder that the night was not yet over, that the story was still unfolding. Caleb's hand brushed lightly against Evan's as he passed him a cup of tea, a gesture so simple yet loaded with meaning. Evan's breath caught. He realized that every small action carried weight, the slightest movement, the softest word, the gentlest glance. They were no longer just two people in a room. They were two people navigating years of missed opportunities, unspoken feelings, and lingering longing. Every second felt precious, every word significant. The stranger finally spoke. A voice polite but curious, asking questions that drew attention to unresolved matters in Evan's life. Evan answered carefully, aware of Caleb's presence, aware of the delicate balance of the moment. Caleb remained calm, occasionally interjecting with gentle guidance, making sure the conversation didn't spiral into discomfort. It was a careful dance, a navigation of emotions that required sensitivity, patience, and understanding. As the night wore on, Evan realized that he was no longer hiding behind fear. He was opening himself to possibility, even in the midst of complication. Caleb's presence was a steadying force, reminding him that connection and truth mattered more than avoidance and regret. The stranger's questions, though unexpected, forced Evan to confront aspects of his past and present he had ignored, creating clarity amid the emotional storm.